Oh hey, I didn't see you there. Welcome to my channel. It's my first episode ever. I am Pablo. I'm from Argentina. I'm a recent suburbia transplant. And I will be showing you how I work with my wood. How I work with wood. Or I'm a woodworking noob. So my first episode is all about building those benches back there. And I'll try to be as detailed as possible. It's my first time doing it. And so here are all the tips. And I hope you enjoy.
So as I just mentioned, I'm a recent suburbia transplant. I've moved out of New York City to Long Island to escape this COVID quarantine. And I picked up woodworking as a hobby. My wife recommended it and I jumped onto the idea. As you can see, I'm working in the basement of the house that I just moved into. And most of the stuff that you see I'm using, I recently bought, and I will do my best in sharing with you guys exactly where I got everything and what are the tools that I'm using. So the main thing that I use is the DeWalt 6.5-inch circular saw. As you can see, it's perfect for cutting 2x4s. Did make a lot of mistakes with working on this, so I'll point them out as they go by, and you hear me laugh as well. One of the biggest struggles that I had working on making this bench was the unevenness of the floor. Even though I'd gotten these very cheap and pretty stable sawhorses from Craftsman at Lowe's, you will see me jiggling the pieces of wood as I cut them, because the pressure of the wood as I cut it would hold the blade in place and it wouldn't let me make the proper cuts. As you can see, I'm struggling to get this simple cut, but I had to reconfigure the clamps to make sure that I finished and had the last tip completed. Here's where I realized that I had cut one of the pieces of wood really bad, and I just had to laugh to myself as a new woodworker. Making a simple mistake like that it's gonna happen. So let me tell you a little bit about the dimensions of this bench. I found one online, but based on the measurements of the pieces of wood that I was able to find at Lowe's, I had to make some arrangements. So what I did get was one 10 feet 2x8, which I cut into 4 pieces to make the 2 benches. Each one of those pieces is about 30 inches long, so the benches are relatively short. They should allow for at least 2 people to sit on them. As for the legs, I bought 3 8 feet 2x4s. I had bought 2 initially and it wasn't enough, so I had to go back to Lowe's and buy another one. And the measurements of them, the height of the bench is 17.5 inches or so. I know that the average height of a chair is about 17 inches, so I cut the legs at 15.5 to just add the 2 extra inches with the seat on the top. So you can see here I keep on struggling in making the cuts. I had to flip the board and go from both ends, and it was a bit difficult. What I did learn was to try to figure out and make it as even as possible. At this point I'm not really realizing that the board it's moving. This is such a small move and the saw will not go. You'll have to excuse my puppy Bumble, who's in some of the shots as well as in the recordings of the audio. He likes to bark around. He's a beagle, he's loud and loves to howl. So let me tell you a little bit more about the tools that I used. So the Craftsman sawhorse I got at Lowe's. They're like $20, so super cheap. They're really stable, as long as the floor is even. As for the clamps, they are a set from Irwin Quick Grip that I got on Amazon. The pack brings 8 different sizes and dimensions, which is awesome. It's great to use them for different purposes. As you can see, I built a little workbench makeshift to be able to drill all the holes on the bottom of the bench. To join the two pieces of the bench, what I did also get was the correct pocket hole jig that allows you to drill holes sideways into the wood. That device was a little bit more expensive than I thought it would be. It ranges in the $40 price range. I don't understand why such a piece of plastic can be so expensive. It does have a metal hole, so the drill doesn't actually mess it up. It comes with the drill bit and the screws and the screwdriver head. Um, as for the screws that I'm about to show you, I got 2.5-inch screws with a T5 star drive. They're construction screws, so they're resistant to the weather, um, and they're a great addition to tools that I could use in the house. Now, one mistake I made, as you can see, is try to drill the hole by just holding it onto my hands, and that just did not work. So what I did decide to do is make sure that everything is held tight and stable by using the clamps. The clamps are not long enough for me to attach the whole piece of wood from its on its width, so I had to just hold the ends together. The makeshift bench I made with an extra piece of plywood that I had used to make my wife an extra shelf in one of the cabinets of the kitchen. And so what I did is I just clamped it to the sawhorses. It was definitely not a very stable bench to be working on, but it did its job. Hopefully eventually maybe I'll build one myself or buy pieces and I'll put it together. What I'm making holes for right now that is the center piece. That piece is 17 inches long, and that goes attached to the legs on both ends of the bench. The benches make a letter H with an extra line on the top. The pieces that I'm drilling holes on right now, those are 9.5 inches long, and they support the legs themselves. And as I mentioned before, those are 15.5 inches. I prefer to drill the holes into the wood since I had already gotten the jig, but you can do them the whatever way you want it. I just prefer to hide the screws inside the bench, and so that's what I decided to do. I will post a detailed list of all the tools that I used and the dimensions of the bench down in the description below. The pencil that I use that's really cool is called a Van Gogh pencil. Sounds like Vincent Van Gogh. You need a particular type of sharpener for it, but what I did is I just used a switchblade and I sharpened it just as if I was sharpening an arrow out in the wild, and it worked. But it's pretty good. It's really stable, and it also has a big blue crayon like on the back that allows for bigger markers on bigger surfaces. This hobby of woodworking has also expanded into filmmaking as well, as you guys can see. My wife's gotten into the planners thing, and so she began creating content and I helped her out with it, and so I decided to do myself the same with all the woodworking I was going to work on. I have some experience doing film back in like high school, and it just brought back some good memories of what it was like making videos back in the day. The little puppy you see in the videos I mentioned, his name is Bumble. You can see him on the floor right there. We actually, my wife and I met on Bumble a couple of years ago, and so during this quarantine we decided to adopt a dog, which we didn't get to, but Bumble is actually a purchased puppy, and we named him Bumble, just as the app in which we met. Moving out to the suburbs was also in part to have a little yard to be able to be out and about. As you saw in the beginning of the video, that's the yard of the house that we moved into. And Bumble loves being out there. It's a great space to have people over and work out, and just be able to be outside. Coming out of living in a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, New York, it was very, very well needed to just be outside. That's just something that I really missed for a couple of months at the beginning of this year. This was one of the hardest things to do. After I had built the entire frame for the legs down below, I needed to put the screws in, attach the legs to the seat itself, and my machine did not fit into the space, and so what I ended up doing was have to like by hand screw these screws pretty much the entire width of the 2x4s. So you can see it took me a while to do this, and I used a smaller screwdriver that's attached to a small set of pliers that I have. And once I lined it up about 3 inches from the sides and about an inch from each one of the edges, I was able to fit my drill into the space and finish them off. The next step, as you guys will see, is going to be the staining of the bench. So for the staining of the bench, I actually found some staining in the basement of this house that we're renting. The owners have half of the basement to themselves, which you can see back behind me. They use it for storage, and there's some stuff stored there that it seems like they'd never be used. So I took the leisure of borrowing it. If I run out of it, I'll probably buy more and eventually just leave it there. One of the tips of advice when staining was to make sure that the stain is, if it's been sitting for a while, that you mix it well. I did both of the benches, and one of the benches a lot darker than the other, because one of them I actually did 2 coats of the staining. I'm still undecided if I want to do the same thing with some other projects I have in mind of doing, besides getting that shelf added to the kitchen cabinets, is to make a birdhouse with smaller pieces of wood, as well as building Bumble, my dog, a little dog house. We have a double deck in this house, and I plan to add some walls to under the staircase that connects these 2 decks to just create a space for Bumble to be able to be when we're outside and cool off, especially when we're hosting our guests in the yard. The people that we've hosted predominantly just we sit out on the deck and we stay outside just to be precautious of COVID-19 and not sharing the inside much of our house. So given that we love to host people, I wanted to have some more space for people to sit down around the fire pit or by the tables, just extra sitting surface area for when we host more people. We already have 6 chairs outside, so this would allow for a few more people to be able to gather around, and maybe the kids, my nephews and so on. And one of the last things that I wanted to share with you guys, and see if you guys are interested on, I might also make videos on my grilling. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm from Argentina and I love to grill. I bought a barbecue as well this summer, and I am smoking meats a lot, and cooking everything on this grill, especially with some meal planning that we were doing with my wife. I like to just cook anything and everything on the grill. So if you guys are interested, just let me know in the comments. I will be also trying to be making cooking videos on the grill eventually. So thank you all for watching. I'm glad, hope you guys enjoyed, and until the next time.